Montgomery County 911, where's your emergency?
203 South Madison Street.
In what town?
Darlington.
Hey, what's going on there?
I just stabbed myself and I killed my 2 children.
You stabbed yourself and killed your 2 children?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and what's your name?
Brandy Orley.
Brandy what?
Orley.
Okay. How do you spell your last name?
Worley.
And where are the children at?
In my daughter's room on the floor.
In your daughter's room on the floor? Okay. What's your phone number, Brandy? And what caused you to do this today?
My husband wanted a divorce and wanted to take my kid.
This is Denise Huskins. She was kidnapped from her boyfriend's home in Vallejo, California by an unknown person in 2015. Her boyfriend Aaron reported the crime, but police doubted his story. They accused Aaron of fabricating the kidnapping with Huskins as part of an elaborate hoax or conspiracy to extort money. Despite the accusations, Huskins turned up safe 2 days later in Southern California, over 400 miles away. It would later be revealed that her kidnapper was a former attorney named Matthew Mueller. He was arrested months later by the FBI for the crime. In 2017, he was sentenced to 40 years in prison after pleading guilty. After Mueller's arrest, it became clear that Huskins was in fact a blameless victim of a bizarre, real-life kidnapping. Huskins and Quinn sued the city of Vallejo for defamation of character and were awarded $2.5 million. Denise and Aaron are now happily married and have 2 beautiful children.
In 1947, the glamour of Hollywood was overshadowed by the grim and mystifying tale of Elizabeth Short, forever known as the Black Dahlia, a 22-year-old aspiring actress. Her lifeless body was discovered in a vacant lot in Los Angeles, severed at the waist. On a fateful January morning, the brutal murder sent shockwaves through the city and beyond. Capturing the nation's attention, Elizabeth Short's tragic demise became a media sensation, with newspapers and tabloids sensationalizing the gruesome details of the crime. Despite the efforts of law enforcement, the case remains unsolved to this day, adding a layer of mystery to an already horrifying crime.
In the late 1960s, the Zodiac Killer terrorized San Francisco and shocked America. He claimed the lives of at least 5 random victims through vicious stabbings, shootings, and more. The self-named murderer then taunted police and newspapers with bizarre cryptic letters and puzzles. The letters and puzzles included twisted clues about his motives and identity codes that baffle authorities to this day. He was terrifyingly strategic with how he manipulated ciphers to toy with the police. After his string of cold-blooded murders, the Zodiac Killer vanished without a trace before he could be caught. 50 years later, his identity remains unknown. The faceless killer who once gripped California with fear still evades capture. How did he escape authorities and fade away into obscurity? The Zodiac mystery lives on. This is Jennifer Doulos. She was last seen on May 24, 2019 in New Canaan, Connecticut, after dropping her children off at school. When she didn't show up for several doctor appointments and missed picking up her kids that afternoon, her friends became extremely concerned. Within days, investigators found her abandoned car and traces of blood at her home, leading to suspicions of foul play. Attention quickly turned to Jennifer's husband Fotis Doulos and his girlfriend Michelle Troconis as persons of interest. Though Fotis denied involvement, arrest warrants alleged he was lying in wait for Jennifer to return home the morning she went missing. The evidence against him was largely circumstantial, however, and without Jennifer's body, prosecutors faced an uphill legal battle. Tragically, 8 months later in 2020, Fotis Doulos died by suicide, taking any knowledge about what truly happened to Jennifer with him to the grave. Over 4 years later, her 5 children are left without parents, and Jennifer's mysterious disappearance case remains unsolved. This is Terry Missy Bevers, a fitness instructor and mother of 3 from Midlothian, Texas. In 2016, Missy was found brutally murdered inside a church shortly before she was scheduled to teach a 5 a.m. exercise class with her students. Surveillance footage captured haunting images of an unknown individual dressed in police tactical gear wandering through the church for nearly 30 minutes prior to the killing. The perpetrator's face was completely covered. When students arrived at the locked church entrance shortly before Missy's class was to start, they made the disturbing discovery of her body. Missy was brutally beaten and stabbed to death. An intense investigation followed, with both local police and federal agents unable to determine a suspect from analyzing footage of the perpetrator's clothes, gait, and vehicle. But that was not enough. Missy's vicious murder still remains unsolved, leaving her friends, family, and shocked small town seeking answers and justice in her tragic killing. In the winter of 1978, Yuba County became the backdrop to an insane mystery that would grip the nation: the disappearance of the Yuba County Five. Jack Madruga, William Sterling, Theodore Wire, Jack Hewitt, and Gary Mathias, 5 friends with intellectual disabilities, vanished without a trace after attending a basketball game. After the game, they drove to a nearby convenience store and made a phone call asking to be picked up. But no one ever arrived, and that was the last confirmed sighting of the men. Over the next few months, there were sightings reported that seemed to match the missing friends. But the most bizarre clue came in June when Ted Wire's body was discovered in a trailer near the mountain town of Sierra City, almost 70 miles from Chico, where they went missing. The cause of his death could not be determined. To this day, the fate of the other 4 men remains an utter mystery. Their vehicle was eventually discovered, abandoned, in the wilderness, but offered no other clues. The disappearance of the Yuba County Five is one of America's most puzzling, unsolved cases.
(1981), a tranquil cabin in the woods became the haunting scene of one of the most perplexing mysteries. The Ketty Cabin murders. Sue Sharp and her children, John and Dana Wingate, were about to endure a night of unimaginable horror. What unfolded within those walls would shatter the peace of Ketty forever. The next day, a gruesome discovery: the lifeless bodies of Sue, John, and Dana. Signs of a brutal struggle painted a picture of unspeakable violence. But here's the chilling part. Despite investigations, theories, and suspects, the Ketty Cabin murders remain a haunting enigma, a dark secret that continues to evade resolution. What really happened in that cabin? Who was responsible for the terror that unfolded? Share your thoughts and theories below.
From 1974 to 1986, a vicious serial predator terrorized the state of California, committing over 50 rapes and at least 13 murders. This monster operated across the state, from Sacramento down through the East Bay area and Santa Barbara. His victims ranged in age from 13 to 41. His crimes were carefully planned and executed. He was merciless and sadistic in his attacks. This rampage went on for over a decade without police able to identify a viable suspect. Finally, in 2018, thanks to advancements in genetic genealogy, authorities identified former police officer Joseph James DeAngelo as the suspected Golden State Killer. The 74-year-old Navy veteran was arrested at his home in Citrus Heights, California, after decades of living as a free man. After 40 years, the Golden State Killer was finally brought to justice. Joseph James DeAngelo received a life sentence without the possibility of parole in August 2020 for his decades of crimes. In April 2017, a horrific murder video was posted on Facebook which shocked the nation. Steve Stevens, a 37-year-old resident of Cleveland, Ohio, posted a video to Facebook showing the random killing of 74-year-old Robert Godwin Sr. Stevens approached Godwin on the street, demanded he say a woman's name, and then shot him dead. The chilling video showed Stevens with no remorse, even making comments to justify his actions.
I got a lot of built-in anger and frustration, man. I snapped, dog. I just snapped, dog. I just snapped.
The video was online for 3 hours before being taken down, sparking outrage at Facebook and a frenzied manhunt for Stevens. He was spotted 2 days later in Erie County, Pennsylvania, and took his own life as police approached his car. The senseless attack left Godwin's family and community reeling. It also raised difficult questions about violence and social media.
Help me, I'm Amanda Berry.
You need police, fire, ambulance.
I'm the police.
Okay, and what's going on there?
I've been kidnapped and I've been missing for 10 years and I'm here, I'm free now.
This is Amanda Berry. She was kidnapped along with 3 other girls back in 2004. In 2013, they were able to escape from their kidnapper in Cleveland, Ohio. What happened was the dramatic escape of 3 young Cleveland women who had been held captive for over a decade in an ordinary house on Seymour Avenue. Their courageous break for freedom stunned the local community and brought an end to 10 years of brutal abuse and cruelty. For the full story, watch the video of Cleveland kidnappings on my channel. Have you ever heard of the Bermuda Triangle? It's a mysterious area in the western part of the North Atlantic Ocean. Legend has it that ships and planes disappear without a trace in this region. But what's the real story behind it? The Bermuda Triangle got its name in 1964 when a magazine article mentioned the strange disappearances that occurred there. However, the truth is, these disappearances aren't as mysterious as they seem. Firstly, the Bermuda Triangle is one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world. With so much traffic, accidents are bound to happen. Storms, strong currents, and human error can all contribute to these incidents. Secondly, the area is also known for its unpredictable weather patterns. Sudden storms can appear out of nowhere, making navigation difficult. This, combined with the vastness of the ocean, can make it challenging to locate missing ships or planes. Lastly, there have been many exaggerated stories and myths surrounding the Bermuda Triangle. Some claim that it's a paranormal vortex, or that aliens are responsible for the disappearances. However, there's no scientific evidence to support these claims. So, while the Bermuda Triangle may be a fascinating topic, it's important to separate fact from fiction. Stay curious, but also stay grounded in reality. For over 3 decades, the self-named BTK Killer terrorized Wichita, Kansas. From 1974 to 1991, Dennis Rader murdered 10 people in cold blood, often binding, torturing, and killing his victims. He would then send chilling letters to police and local news outlets bragging about his gruesome crimes. Investigators were unable to crack the case or unmask BTK's true identity. The case went ice cold, becoming one of America's biggest unsolved serial killer mysteries. That was until 2004, when Dennis Rader unexpectedly resurfaced, sending police a floppy disk that contained metadata tying him to BTK. Still, with no strong suspects, police orchestrated a cunning false alarm at a Home Depot store to collect DNA samples from multiple men, including Rader, who worked there. Forensic tests showed a perfect match between Rader's DNA and DNA found at previous BTK crime scenes. In 2005, Wichita police finally made an arrest next to 31 years in the making, nabbing the notorious BTK Killer. Dennis Rader confessed to the decade-long murderous crime spree and was handed 10 consecutive life sentences. This is Ted Bundy. He was one of the most infamous serial killers in United States history. Though the exact numbers are unknown, Bundy confessed to killing over 30 women and girls in a horrific murder spree that spanned from 1974 to 1978. Notably charming and intelligent, no one who knew Bundy suspected him of committing such horrendous crimes. This enabled him to gain his victims' trust and lure them to secluded areas where he could act out his cruel fantasies. Despite being arrested and jailed multiple times during his killing career, he continued to deny involvement, even going so far as representing himself in court. It wasn't until 1989, just hours before his execution, that Bundy admitted full guilt and expressed regret for his actions. His good looks and defiant nature sparked significant media attention, and even a twisted kind of fame, which is why the Ted Bundy case continues to intrigue and unsettle the public imagination decades after his crimes. Though dead for over 30 years now, Bundy's chilling legacy lives on as a reminder that monsters often have an innocuous disguise that hides the darkness within. This is Griselda Blanco. She was one of the most notorious drug lords in history. Known as the cocaine godmother, she was a key figure in Miami's bloody cocaine cowboy wars of the 1970s and 1980s. Blanco pioneered ingenious smuggling routes and distribution networks that helped establish Miami as a drug trafficking hub. Born in Colombia, Griselda turned to crime at a young age. By the 1970s, she had established her own drug trafficking network, known as the Medellin Cartel. Griselda oversaw a multi-billion-dollar criminal empire and would kill anyone who got in her way, earning her the nickname, the Black Widow. At the height of her power, Blanco was one of the richest and most dangerous drug lords in the world. It's estimated she may have been responsible for up to 200 murders. But her reign of terror eventually caught up with her. After serving over a decade in prison, Griselda was gunned down in Medellin in 2012 at age 69. Her violent life story has come to an end. During World War II, a secret operation was carried out that would change the course of history. It was called Operation Mincemeat, and its purpose was to deceive the enemy. You see, the Allies wanted to convince the Germans that they were planning to invade Greece instead of Sicily. So, they came up with a brilliant plan. They took the dead body of a homeless man, dressed him as a British officer, and planted fake documents on him. These documents contained false information about the invasion plans. Then, they let the body wash up on the shores of Spain, where German spies would find it. And guess what? It worked. The Germans fell for the trap and diverted their forces to Greece, leaving Sicily vulnerable. This operation played a crucial role in the success of the Allied invasion of Sicily, and it remains one of the most fascinating and daring secrets of World War II.
They called him El Patron, the king of cocaine, Pablo Escobar, a name that still sends shivers down spines. He built an empire on white gold, a ruthless drug cartel that controlled the cocaine trade from Colombia to Miami. His reign was brutal: bombings, assassinations. Anyone who crossed him disappeared. But for many Colombians, he was a Robin Hood, showering the poor with riches. The world watched in awe and horror as his power grew. He even challenged the Colombian government, declaring his own independent state. But his empire couldn't last forever. The D hunted him down, and in 1993, his reign of terror came to an end on a Medellin rooftop. El Patron is gone.
In the 1980s and early 1990s, Jeffrey Dahmer, known as the Milwaukee Cannibal, terrorized the nation with a string of gruesome murders that would become the stuff of nightmares. Born in 1960, Dahmer's troubled childhood and early signs of disturbing behavior hinted at the darkness that would later consume him. But it was in the 1980s that his murderous spree truly began. Dahmer's first known murder occurred in 1978, but it wasn't until the late 1980s that he escalated to a series of gruesome killings, primarily targeting young men and boys. His modus operandi involved luring his victims with promises of money or companionship before subjecting them to unspeakable horrors. Perhaps the most shocking aspect of Dahmer's crimes was his descent into cannibalism. After murdering his victims, he engaged in gruesome acts of dismemberment and necrophilia, going so far as to consume parts of their bodies. The reign of terror finally came to an end in 1991 when one of Dahmer's intended victims managed to escape and led police to his apartment, uncovering a house of horrors filled with evidence of his crimes. In 1992, he was sentenced to 16 life terms in prison.
In the gaslight streets of Victorian London, a chilling tale unfolded in 1888. Terror gripped Whitechapel as the infamous Jack the Ripper prowled the shadows. His macabre spree left 5 women brutally murdered, their identities forever lost to history. The Ripper, a spectral figure, taunted the police with cryptic letters and gruesome crime scenes. Fear permeated the cobblestone alleys as the city held its breath. Despite countless theories and suspects, Jack the Ripper's true identity remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in criminal history, casting a long, haunting shadow over the annals of true crime.
This is Natalie Holloway, a bright 18-year-old from Alabama who had her whole life ahead of her. She was celebrating her high school graduation on a fun trip to Aruba in May 2005. The last night of the trip, witnesses saw Natalie leaving a bar with local friends. She was never seen again. A massive search spanning land and sea turned up no trace of the young Natalie. Questions swirled about what happened that night as conflicting stories emerged. Prime suspect Joran van der Sloot claimed Natalie had seizures and died on the beach, a story not corroborated. 18 years later, on October 18, 2023, Joran van der Sloot confessed in a proffer letter to killing Holloway. He wrote that he kicked and bludgeoned her with a cinder block after she refused his sexual advances and disposed her body in the ocean. While Natalie was officially declared dead in 2012 with her body never recovered, her case maintains a gripping legacy about the pursuit of justice for lost loved ones. This is Molly Tibits. In July 2018, she'd been staying with her boyfriend for the summer. On the evening of July 18th, she had been out for an evening jog just a few blocks from her boyfriend's home when she vanished without a trace. For over a month, authorities extensively searched the area and conducted hundreds of interviews, but came up empty-handed. There were no clues left behind, and no indication as to whether Molly had been abducted or had simply run away. In August 2018, a tragic break in the case led police to 24-year-old Christian Bahena Rivera, an undocumented farm worker. After confessing to following Molly on her jog and then approaching and attacking her, Rivera directed authorities to a cornfield where he had hidden Molly's body. On August 30th, 2021, Rivera was sentenced to life in prison without parole. This is the Bennington Triangle. Between 1920 and 1950, several people disappeared in this area without a trace, sparking paranormal theories that continue to this day. The first was Mitzie Rivers, a hunting guide who often trekked through the dense, remote woods of Glastonbury Mountain. In November 1945, Mitzie Rivers led a group of 4 hunters. The party split up, and only the hunters returned from the woods, with no sign of Mitzie Rivers. An extensive search found no clues to his vanishing. Just a month later, in December 1945, experienced hunter Paula Weldon disappeared while taking a walk alone on the long trail on Glastonbury Mountain. Like Mitzie Rivers before her, no trace of Paula Weldon was ever found despite intensive searches. The next year brought more strange occurrences in what became known as the Bennington Triangle. In 1946, 3 local men, James Tedford, Paul Jepson, and Frida Langer, all disappeared mysteriously without any reasonable explanation. In the early hours of September 17, 2009, a 24-year-old woman named Mitzie Richardson was released from a sheriff's station in Malibu, California, after being arrested for failing to pay an $89 restaurant bill. Though she exhibited signs of mental distress, Mitzie was released just after midnight without her phone, wallet, or car, into an unfamiliar and remote area with no means of transportation. And that was it. She disappeared. She was missing for 11 months before. On August 9, 2010, Mitrice's remains were discovered in an isolated ravine less than 10 miles from the sheriff's station. The cause of her death appeared suspicious, but remains undetermined. An autopsy noted no obvious signs of trauma. Mitrice's unexplained disappearance and death sparked outrage and allegations of negligence and misconduct by the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department for releasing her alone into the darkness. In 2011, the Richardson family settled the civil lawsuit with LA County privately for $900,000. To this day, the circumstances surrounding Mitzie Richardson's final hours and death are unclear. Her family continues to search for answers and justice for Mitzie nearly 15 years later. Listen to this. In the early hours of June 3, 2011, 20-year-old college student Lauren Spearer went missing in Bloomington, Indiana, after a night out partying with friends. Lauren was last seen by a friend at around 4:30 a.m. after leaving a popular college bar. She was reported missing after she did not show up for an exam later that afternoon. An intensive search ensued over months and years, but turned up little. Lauren had vanished without a trace on what seemed a typical summer night. Friends who saw her last report that she was drunk, barefoot, and needing assistance just to stand. She refused offers for help getting home safely. Police suspect foul play as details don't quite add up. Who was the friend she wandered off with? Why did no one walk her home? Over a decade later, Lauren's disappearance remains unsolved. For the Spearer family, it is an endless nightmare. Their daughter is likely gone, but with no answers or justice. Lauren is presumed dead and her case remains unsolved. In October 2009, 44-year-old Bobby Dale Jameson, his 40-year-old wife Sherilyn Leon Jameson, and their 6-year-old daughter Madison Stormy Starr went missing in Red Oak, Oklahoma, under bizarre circumstances. They had reportedly driven out to look at a property they planned to buy, but their truck was later found abandoned with their belongings still inside. For the next 4 years, there was no trace of the family. Finally, in November 2013, hunters discovered the skeletal remains of 2 adults and a child in the woods, near where the Jamesons' truck had been left. The bodies were so degraded that it took extensive testing to identify them as the missing Jameson family. Authorities concluded it was likely the Jamesons died from gunshot wounds shortly after their disappearance. But with few clues and no indication of who killed the family of 3 execution style, or why, the murders of the Jamesons are still a chilling unsolved mystery over a decade later. This is Chandra Levy. She was a 24-year-old intern at the Federal Bureau of Prisons in Washington, D.C. Chandra vanished without a trace on May 1st, 2001. She was last seen jogging in Rock Creek Park. The media frenzy surrounding the case intensified when it was revealed that Chandra had been having an affair with married Congressman Gary Condit. Condit was evasive when questioned by police, raising suspicions of involvement. However, he was eventually cleared as a suspect. For over a year, there were no solid leads. Then tragically, in May 2002, Chandra's skeletal remains were discovered in Rock Creek Park. She had been attacked while jogging and died from her injuries. In 2009, Ingmar Gwandika was convicted of Levy's murder and sentenced to 60 years in prison. However, in 2015, his conviction was vacated due to unreliable witness testimony. To this day, the truth about what exactly happened to Chandra Levy continues to be shrouded in some mystery. The case remains an enduring source of public intrigue and speculation. Picture this. It's 1998, a dream vacation with the Bradley family. Amy, a 23-year-old, having a blast on a Caribbean cruise. But then, poof, she vanishes without a trace. She was last seen partying in the ship's nightclub. Amy was all smiles. The next morning, her family discovered an empty cabin, sending shockwaves through the cruise. Her belongings were still there, but Amy was gone. No trace. Crew searches, investigations, even a reported sighting in Barbados. But no luck. Theories swirl. Was she abducted? Did she fall overboard? Or did she choose to vanish? To this day, no one knows.